Good afternoon, and welcome to Supply Chain Now Radio. We are broadcasting live today from the supply chain capital of the East Coast, Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Scott Luton. I'm your host for today's session. In our webinar today, we're going to be learning more about the organizations that have successfully utilized a supply chain center of excellence powered by advanced analytics to drive performance gains and continuous improvement. Our featured presenter today is Reitze de Graaf, a senior consultant with BCI Global. More about Reitze in just a moment, but as always, we're glad to have you with us here today on Supply Chain Now Radio. So let's tackle our ground rules first. All attendees will be on mute as we're looking to optimize the audio experience. Now, with that said, let's make it as interactive as possible. So please do submit your questions via the chat toolbar. We'll answer as many as we have time for at the conclusion of today's webinar. And finally, a PDF of today's presentation and the recording will be sent out in the next few days to each of our registrants. So let's take a minute to recognize our sponsors here on Supply Chain Now Radio. Special thanks to our sponsor, TalentStream, a recruiting and staffing firm that specializes in helping organizations find top talent in the engineering, the manufacturing, and the supply chain space. To learn more, visit us at talentstreamstaffing.com. Special thanks to our sponsor, APICS Atlanta, which has been serving the Metro Atlanta community since 1964. For those of you new to APICS, it is the premier industry association dedicated to end-to-end supply chain management. Around the world, our organization serves over 45,000 members. APICS offers membership and professional development, a wide range of education opportunities, industry-leading research and publications, and widely recognized professional certifications. To learn more, visit us at apicsatlanta.org. So let's share a little more information today about our wonderful speaker, Reitze de Graaf. Reitze is a senior consultant at BCI Global, where he focuses on high-tech markets, including capital equipment and consumer products, and healthcare markets, including medical equipment and devices, pharma, biotech, and over-the-counter consumer products. Reitze has helped many technology and healthcare companies redesign their supply chain networks and go-to-market strategies, improve their network performance, as well as reduce their supply chain risk around the globe. Reitze has specific knowledge on regulatory and quality aspects of healthcare supply chains and the challenges presented by rapid technological innovations in the high-tech supply chains. Prior to joining BCI, Reitze spent 20 years in supply chain management in high-tech OEM companies like Bosch Rexroth and Philips VDL. Since joining BCI in 2013, Reitze has supported healthcare and high-tech companies in projects optimizing their supply chains across the globe. Reitze is also co-managing the Healthcare Logistics Forum, an interest group of 25 international manufacturing companies in the medical devices and pharma industries. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Reitze de Graaf.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for this great introduction and also for the opportunity to be able to speak on this APICS and other sponsors made available presentation today. And thank you also for all of the participants that have shown up in great numbers. Thank you for that. And I just hope I can give you the right atmosphere and the right information to sell you and bring to you a good story on what is this, the rise of supply chain centers of excellence, and how is advanced analytics playing a role in that? Because we see many companies talking about big data, advanced analytics, blockchain, Internet of Things, and other trends. Yet only a limited number of companies really embarked upon establishing the supply chain center of excellence as a proactive response. It helps them to cope with the increased dynamics in today's world. And the companies that have implemented supply chain centers of excellence have invested also heavily in strong analytical capabilities. So the thing is really on today is a supply chain center of excellence that is fueled with strong advanced analytics capabilities. Is that the answer to the challenges at hand? I'll take you through this and make sure that we have a well-spent time together. So let me push the button Okay, what are we going to talk about? Quick, short introduction on BCI Global. It'll only take a moment. Then I'll walk you through the megatrends and impacts on supply chains, the rise of the supply chain centers of excellence, of course, block 4 on analytics capabilities, but I'll also be able to share you some case studies, and before I walk you through the conclusions, and I open up the floor for Q&A. Please share your questions, use the chat function as Scott indicated. I do hope to be able to free up some time for that and look forward to your questions. About BCI Global. We're in business since 1985. We're headquartered in the Netherlands, in Nijmegen, as you see on the right side. We have access with our own organization, but we also have access to 200 in total supply chain professionals around the globe. We have a partner in the United States of America, in St. Ange. St. Ange is also housed in the headquarters that we have here over in Europe for their European business. We're active in go-to-markets, in supply chain analytics, in planning and sales and operations planning, basically helping our clients to go from strategy all the way down to realization. And we're so glad that we can make that happen for numerous clients in a variety of industrial verticals that you only see an indication of up here. You recognize, of course, quite some of the Fortune 500 companies, to which we're very proud of serving them. And I've also been lucky enough to be able to help in the last 5 years that I'm now with the company, not only being active in the USA or in Europe, but also in Russia or in Asia even. Okay, let's move on to the topic at hand. Megatrends and the impacts on supply chains. Now, as you see here in the middle, megatrends and nice pictures around it. I'll just go through it shortly. We live now in dynamic times, and the pace of technology developments is really unsurpassed. It's faster than ever, and the one development is overtaking the other one while not even maturizing. Global supply chains also means that we do have more and more risks, as we have seen recent in turmoils, geopolitical ones. We of course see the decisions taken by U.S. government to raise import duties on certain categories of products, which changes dynamics in the places of where to produce and how to move goods around. And so apart from that, there's of course weather impact, etc. And there is tons of developments, and we can talk about as days. But let's look at some more trends in detail. And the question, of course, is, are you prepared? Are you assessing potential impacts of what this might mean to you, for your company, and how you can add value there? So to move on, we have a few examples in megatrends. Internet of Things, of course, we're becoming aware of it. And a nice thing like sensors in beer dispensers to check temperature and fill rate, etc. You know, there's a massive amount and even growing development in the area of Internet of Things and other topics there. They're everywhere. They're in autonomous cars, of course, and we see also agriculture farmers using the Internet of Things for combining data on their local weather, the growing crops, but also on what's the pricing at the auction expected in the next week. On the M&A part, we see many merger and acquisitions happening, and with the economic situation rallying, we see that happen more and more. Cost of capital is still low, and there is a need for skill in the companies. It will drive the need to look at the companies, mine the data, and look for synergies in supply chain and beyond. 3D printing, of course, is another area where we see a lot of emphasis on in the markets and in communications. And whether this is for spare parts, you know, or companies having issues in getting complex markets like Brazil, they will get just the basic materials in and then fit the needs of a customer with a specific hearing device, helped by 3D printing in that. Robots getting in there and getting traction in DC operations as well. And that's not just because of cost, but also because of scarcity of labor. And this also puts the question, when to apply technology? When are you running out of people? Drones, like you have seen, of course, in all the communication around with Amazon. Well, lengthy supply chains and risks across the globe will have also the impact on, do we see actually what is happening upstream, tier 1 and tier 2? Can we predict on that kind of happenings upstream, like hurricanes or floods? And what do we do then? AI and big data, of course, are elements that are also coming up if you talk about advanced analytics. And we see several companies investing in blockchain technology, for instance, as well, where all parties trust each other, and the ability to lock information in across the chain is basically driving their combined operation, driving their ecosystem. I will talk a bit later on AI and machine learning, but a fundamental question to you and your companies would be, are you engaged in these developments? Do you wait and see, or is your leadership asking for impact? Are you making the ball roll here? So a few questions to ask yourself. We're not going to actually do a poll because we have too many people in the webinar participating to make that happen. But how frequent do you review your supply chain? Is it once every year? Once every 3-5 years? Is that enough? What's the impact of Amazon? This is often asked in US companies, of course, when new leadership comes in place. What's the impact? Just imagine 50% e-commerce. How will the world look like for your company? Are you ready for that? What's the impact of, we already talked about 3D printing. How will that help my supply chain? Are we too cost focused in the supply chain? Why are we not focusing to add value? Maybe we should spend more money in the supply chain to generate better margins in the markets. Are we doing our supply chain work too much in our isolation, splendid isolation? Or are we indeed taking an end-to-end look? And if we don't do it, why don't we do it? Why don't we embark and reach out to other disciplines? Are we really proactive, driving change and searching new answers, searching the answers for new questions? And this, dear audience, this is where potentially a center of excellence can come into place. So a fundamental shift is required to move from, let's say, a one-to-one, from a project-to-project approach towards ongoing capabilities, to make, instead of a fragmented, event-driven flow, we go to a real flow where we take it as a process and work and rework and redo end-to-end play. And we move from cost to flow and value. We move from silos to holistic, and we make sure that we take, we're not satisfied by solving a certain project. We will take a bigger approach in there and make sure that we move to a holistic approach when we look at supply chain. It serves a purpose, it serves the company. Just an example. In the past, many silo decisions were taken, of course, on the inventory with silo-based information. If we go for an integrated approach, then we can deliver value. If you have, for instance, a pharma company with 150 days plus days inventory on hand, and you compare that to only 40 or 60 in technology, how come? What's the value of reducing the cycle time and the lead times in the companies to make sure that inventory and working capital is improved? And can one use maybe artificial intelligence to help push and drive this forward? So this brings me to the rise of supply chain centers. We live in, as said, in dynamic times. We already talked a bit about the center of excellence, but basically, what is it? What is a supply chain center of excellence? They come in various forms and shapes. And you see here in the top, Gartner defines, and Gartner has a nice definition, and it typically holds elements, any definition, like a center of knowledge. It can be virtual, it can be physical, but it concentrates expertise, makes it available to all, and it also concentrates the volume, the activity level, the scale. It brings the scale together so that you can really sustain also having the expertise on board and make sure that you roll out your learnings and your expertise across the globe in other areas as well. Make sure that you are able to find the best way forward, to install the right processes, and work together in rolling that out to make sure that all the companies in the supply chain benefit from it. Not only the ones in your own group, but also your suppliers and your customer organizations. So what would be the key questions to be answered in such a center of excellence? What are the costs? What are the transport strategies? What is the positioning of the SKUs? Where do we do it? And how much does it cost to get there? Typically, as you see on the top drivers are in these. And cost reduction would be transport cost reduction, basically. And this is a bit funny though, because yeah, it obviously is that we're still very cost focused. And we're for instance, much less into orchestrating demand, orchestrating the sales and operations process, and making sure that we have an omnichannel strategy and have not only have that in place, but also optimize for it. So you can say that although I would be very pleased to get something started like a center of excellence, and it's always good to get started on the top 3, let's not forget about what we see in the bottom row here, because we still have the opportunity to make much more happen when we are establishing a center of excellence than just in the transport and distribution. We can also look into how can we support sales and operations planning and help speed up the processes. How can we manipulate, how can we update the locations that we use for supply and for delivery into the customers. So although this is the current established focus on the top, I do expect over time we will see the items that we have at the bottom here will lift in the degree to which they are also covered for in any center of excellence. So if we have those center of excellences in place, how do they look like? Well, honestly, they come in various forms and shapes. If you look at this slides on the elements, like the organization, the process, the analytics tools, but also the people. And basically, 3 types of center of excellence can be distinguished if you look at the staffing. Either you do it all in-house, maybe except a few topics like developing your tools, but you would own them, right? So if you have your insourced version of a center of excellence, basically you run the show, you have your people, you own the goods, you own the data, you own the analytics, and you do it. But you can also think of the other extreme to the right, execution by a business process outsource provider. And you can even think of the one in the middle, the hybrid model, where you have a mix, some kind of the work done or some area of the work done dominantly by the company themselves or the BPO provider, and even a nice mix of doing things together in identifying the improvements and doing the analysis. With us here at BCI, we have had the pleasure to support many companies in the development of a center of excellence, and also, by the way, in supporting companies in maturing the ones that they already had in place. And sometimes the scope of a center of excellence is unclear, and leadership would like to test and make sure that a different setup could work also fine. And they may also have a desire as a company to want to invest in people or systems. And yeah, then sometimes they don't have the skill yet themselves to do so, or they don't have the level of activities to maintain and attain people like data engineers or analysts and keep them employed. The turnaround of people, as you know, maybe also your sales and operations processes, turnaround of people in the center of excellence can be quite high. This is due to the nature of the business. They learn an awful lot. They get a good oversight of what's ongoing. And by that, they have value for other companies or for other departments in your own company. So you need to be aware of that. And that is why sometimes a mix of working with your own, but also partly with an outsourced company, will help guarantee also availability of the role of the center of excellence for the future for the company. And you can make sure that you also drive innovation within the COE itself. So there's a lot to think about if you consider to go for a center of excellence and to agree on with your own company what's the kind of questions that we have, what's the setup that we seek, and how can we make sure that it is something which will work in the longer run for us. Now, having talked about the needs and the benefits and the setup of a center of excellence, let's look a bit deeper into the analytics that we require to fuel such a center of excellence. So this brings me to the analytic capabilities. Which kind of analytics do we require here? Of course, you can see here at the top, questions asked by the leadership. That's the main driver, because there's an orientation, there is a strategy, there is a desire to adapt strategies or to exploit more out of the business opportunities at hand. And that basically drives the leadership, and that drives how they want to develop the company, how they want to gain more of the market, and what direction they take. Really drives the kind of questions that are asked to a center of excellence. They can be, of course, coming in via a direct question to the sales and to the center of excellence. It could be an initiative launched in the manufacturing, with a suggestion how to optimize a certain step in the process, and how that might impact and benefit the market and the greater good. Can also be coming in via a sales and operations planning table, where of course, in sales and operations, we balance between the demand and the supply, and we see where the most of the issues are. So we understand where we need to improve, and where we need to improve the overall business in a holistic view. So that's where the questions asked by leadership, asked by the main alignment processes, really drive what analytics capability is required. Now, via the middle of the capabilities, having abilities for visualization, for doing your network design and redesign, to analyze your transports, or to update and optimize your SKU, your multi-echelon planning. And of course, you need to be able to implement as well. The mix and the kind of tools that you use, of course, is driven by these questions by leadership. But you also have to feed all these analysis tools. So that's where we look at the bottom. We do need a very good data repository, where we have data coming in from multiple systems, dozens of systems typically, where we need to make sure that it's clean, it's aligned, it's harmonized information. The data component must not be underestimated. We typically see that companies are quite optimistic in the quality of their data, and typically we see there needs to be an effort made to ensure that the starting position of the data is good enough for enhanced analytics. And even if you want to use it in the center of excellence, you must make sure that you're good at it, so that in a repetitive mode you're faster done with it. As an example of what kind of supply chain analytics services you can think of in the center of excellence, we've set up this table. It's not exhaustive, but it still shows quite some elements that we see come back in center of excellence. What you see here is 25 blocks with some different analytics. and they can all, or some of them, can be mapped and included into a center of excellence. And really that's dependent on the questions asked by the businesses, by sales and operations, by the merger and acquisition which is on hand. And this could either say we need to include more or do more work on one or more of the analytics, or we have to have more people, or we have to drill deeper and expand the data period that we use in there. On the top, you see the network transport, the risk, cost to serve, inventory, and plan. So you see there's many angles to the business, the kind of analytics you can do. I'll just point out a few. Can we do, for instance, the dynamic carrier selection, how to best exploit the contracts that we have and the current existing transport need, for instance, or the current existing sourcing need. Of course, that is like a monthly, it's not even a tactical, it's a short-term decision. However, you can also go into the risk area where you say, let's do a supply chain risk audit. Where are my risks? If we look at the lanes, if we look at the potential disruptions that might be there, or on the right side, on inventory and plan, do we really do a multi-echelon inventory optimization? Can we have grip and control over stock, even though there are different places and different channels along the chain to the customer? That kind of reviews, whether you use them or not, is really dependent on what questions are asked, and you can find many ways of analyzing for those answers. Again, at the bottom, the business intelligence, the data readiness, how to visualize the data, how to make sure you do your reporting, and how to unlock your data. So let's move to a few examples here. So one element that we often see getting too little attention is the regular review of the supply chain network. And typically we see a design being done. This is what we do as well. We do like 30, 50 projects of supply chain network designs a year, of which some only are redesigned. So once a design is done, companies tend to keep working with that network, and that might be okay in the first few years, but as we know, a market is dynamic. They don't always evolve in the way that we planned for or expected. And yeah, how do you know? How can you make sure that the network you have, the network that you use, is the one that is most tuned to meet the requirements in the market? Also, in case of a merger or carve-out, the network will need to be reviewed. However, if a company has only gradual autonomous growth, it should review every 2 to 4 years, even if it doesn't have a merger or carve-out. This is our experience, because the development of the network will be in a direction, and we need to check that the business needs and the growth is supported in the best possible ways. Also, regulatory may put new challenges to the networks and new optimization opportunities in that sense. The Center of Excellence, that brings together the skill and the expertise and the staffing for doing actually that kind of a regular review. And especially if you get close to tipping points, you're almost there, you almost have enough volume to open up a third DC to lower your distribution costs. Well, then it is really good to understand, where is my tipping point, what would be the location, and when do I start preparing for implementing that optimized network in its next stage. Another example would be portfolio optimization, and this one is an analysis where you need thorough cooperation with the marketing team, of course, because they are driving and they are deciding. It's their main responsibility to decide what do we bring to the market. But we can help understand better what moves well in what areas. We can use the Center of Excellence to make sure that data gets there and that we analyze it and provide a proper cause and a proper analysis to the marketing team as well. What items to keep in the portfolio and why. And of course, most attention goes to launches of new products. And management of the long tail is often ignored. We all know sales and marketing. Sorry if you're there, sales and marketing. But it's fair to say that maintenance of the long tail is often ignored or left to supply chain and not really managed by marketing. And if sales has anything to say there, then we're glad already in the supply chain area. But review of items that are launched or that should be removed from the market, moving into an end of life, that is also a marketing responsibility. And the COE can really support providing clear roles and responsibilities, so it can help structure the process, provide data for making informed decisions. This is where we really can bring portfolio optimization with the Center of Excellence to a next level of maturity. Yeah, you have to bear with me for a moment. I have you now as an audience, so I'll also talk a bit about the data cube. Any data cube should really provide a single set of data for the company to use in the process of optimization. How often do you have debate with your colleagues in other disciplines? What are the numbers? You look at the wrong numbers. Where did you get your numbers? You want to have one set of data that you can all use. And standard elements in the cube should be not only the activity levels, the volumes that you do, but also the performance measurements, like how much of the goods were delivered on time in full, how much of the new NPI was ready and volume ready in time, what's the progress in that. And not all of that information, as I already gave an example for on the NPI, will come per interface databases. Some of that information must come from interviews or other sources, like the NPI project or market projections looking forward, or expert views on the threats and opportunities of new technologies, or expert views on competition. So the data cube should not only do the collection and the cleansing, but also should have an interactive viewer, meaning that you should be able to provide a standard report, but also be able to drill deeper and dig deeper into the data underneath and make other links and other combinations visible for the one that is asking questions, so that you can help support new analysis types and new ideas in reviewing what could be the benefit if we do things in a different way. So data management in a center of excellence, there is often a big disparity, is the gap between the management perception. Management, we have good data, but data engineers or planners, with their view and their experience in the data, they will just think, well, this data is not in line with what we actually ship. It can't be correct. How and where did we collect this? This isn't telling where we stand, nor does it reflect the reality of what we do. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate message, but typically we would see that master data and transactional data, they're challenging with the companies, and the importance of data is eminent, right? So we need to provide clean, harmonized set of data, which is key because we will use that for improving the business and making the informed decisions. We must make sure that the data is good. This means that a tool that helps prepare and manage the data in the cube may be a very good investment. So if we can get management to think we have good data, demonstrate, yeah, not really yet, then could a tool help? Yes, please make sure you find a tool, and there is some logos and an example here in the middle. It's Lamasoft Data Guru. It's just one of those tools. I'm not saying you should buy this one. There are many others on the market as well, and they're good. The plea that I make here is, please talk to your management, and if you're not the management yourself, consider and propose getting tools in place to help you clean, scrub, and repetitively do so, preparing the data for usage in the center of excellence. And just as an example of a data collection process, you will see, you have on the right side, you have your warehouse and 3PL data, your transport and carrier data with, more or less complexity, more or less potential differences in naming conventions, differences in how they register things, and probably also differences in definitions. Once you understand those, you can structurally correct for them as well. On the left side, you see, of course, also the finance data and the ERP data, which come out of all the volume transactions, which have a more of an IT-based way of taking that information in. The warehouse, 3PL, the transport and carrier data, they're typically more like periodic reviews, periodic reports that are coming in, where you should take the information from and put them somehow as a template and feed them into your system. What you don't see here, but can also be a good source of information, is the internet, the expert interviews, and what I've made sure also classes of risks, pricing expectations, and please be aware that data, especially if you look into projections into the future, often don't come as a single line of data. They come in a range, right? So they come in scenarios as well. You might have low, medium, high, or expected, worse than expected, and more optimistic approaches in there. And you must be aware of those. You must be able to collect and structure them in a way that you can start using them in the Center of Excellence data cube. So how do we do that? How do we unlock the data and make sure that we have that as a single place of data into our Center of Excellence? At the bottom, you see the span of time that we have is enormous currently in collecting the data. That'll take half of the time that we spend in making sure that we do analysis. Then we validate, clean, blend, and combine the data, and we use all kinds of tools for that, like of course, well-known Excel sheets or other quite well manipulatable stuff, but also tools like in LlamaSoft for network review, for instance. But again, it's just an example. But you can at least make sure that the data comes in, your data guru is running, you get your cleansing done, and typically today we would already be here in using 3/4 or 80% of the time of any analyst. That's just lost in getting the data and preparing it for the actual data mining on the right, and the actual doing the analysis and providing the answers of management that have been posed. So this is a tremendous job. If we can find a way of speeding this up and making this more simple, we have more time for the actual analysis. That's an interesting thought. So you can see this all as kind of an intro. So I already mentioned a bit about big data. We should also be keen on machine learning and deep learning, etc. And there's a lot of talks on descriptive and prescriptive analytics. However, honestly, many companies are still at the very beginning of this kind of analytics. You know, they're starting to walk. If not, then they start to crawl, and it'll take a bit before they can run, right? So this is what we try to depict here, making sure that we go from validation, mining, and visualization to, moving up the ladder and go to world class if we go with the collaborative planning and making sure that we have all the data in place and we actually use them. Data sensing, artificial intelligence, machine learning. That will come to the upper level, the upper maturity in developing the organization. Today, companies are still piloting mostly on the advanced analytics front. So if they're already past the basic phase and are moving into the advanced, and then the step up to world class and getting the artificial intelligence and the advanced analytics in place, if they're already ready for that and they're testing, they're doing proof of concepts, and they want to see and understand the value. But the messages are positive. They're actually convinced, and they move on. They expand their investments. Imagine you would do that machine learning and how that could impact your demand planning and forecasting, but also the amount and type of people this would have, the impact there in your organization. Would we still require require an X number of planners doing demand planning and forecasting. You know, we see the first applications of software robots, bots, for data scrubbing, but also for SKU planning, parameter review and tuning, and the regular maintenance of that we all know is really a cumbersome job. So, and even you might even think of one step further would be to have scenarios proposed and planning alternatives to be reviewed even with bots. All I'm saying here is that when we get more artificial intelligence around us, it will free up time for our planners to do their actual job of suggesting and finding solutions for bottlenecks that we have. Well, this is a very busy slide. I'm aware of that, and I wanted to keep it in because, you know, it just shows there's a variety of areas where advanced analytics or machine learning or artificial intelligence comes in place and helps generate ideas and helps generate insight to improve the businesses. This table, it's by the way, it's taken from A.T. Kearney. It shows several examples in several industries. The energy with smart grid and exploration, how they do it. Financial services where fraud detection is an element. Manufacturing, of course, where we have predictive maintenance, where advanced analytics will do a great job, and we see that happening already. The retail businesses that really are all about conversion, making sure that you personalize your offerings, you take what is specifically happening in a certain area into account and make the best response and provide a good alternative for your customers. So I added at the bottom a few examples of advanced machine learning tools and artificial intelligence, and it is, you know, the majority of these didn't exist a few years ago. It just shows that it, you know, it just shows the rapid pace of technology development, and it's so exciting to see this happen. And we're really, of course, keen in how this will help us and materialize over the next few years. It will be very interesting to see that. And if you look at the next few years, then this table comes from McKinsey. It shows the more green it is, the more impact that machine learning can bring to the vertical and to the problem type. At the top, at the headers, you see the verticals, like in automotive, which is the upper left column. There is a lot of opportunities that has been concluded by McKinsey in using, for instance, radical personalization, which is a bit to the bottom, improve the forecast. And of course, if you look at areas where there's a lot of green blocks, strategic optimization and predictive analytics to help understand what will happening in the market in a certain area or with a certain product. And machine learning will have great impact across the industries and in a variety of industries. So forecast, demand planning, predictive maintenance already mentioned, processing unstructured data. My God, that is an area. And real-time optimization. You don't have to do like a prescribed carrier for a certain lane. No, you can do really dependent on the current mix of shipments that you need to do. You can do your carrier allocation. You can have the best analysis for that, automated and done by a machine. You can do that. So there is a race on artificial intelligence clearly ongoing. There's so high adoption of AI and machine learning, and there are many tech companies being bought and integrated into Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, all the big companies in the internet areas are very active in combining skills, and bringing and getting access to the talent and the algorithms. And the slide merely shows the acquisitions of technology companies in absorbing all this technology. The bigger are getting bigger, and let's see how the battle for AI and acquisitions in there moves on in the next few years. But more interesting for us at the moment, and something we can do more about, is what can we do with advanced analytics and a center of excellence. So I'm moving now to the case studies. The first one I'd like to show you is now on. It's about Danone. Danone is a dairy firm working globally, and artificial intelligence helped them identify the market potential. If they do, they're highly dependent on promotion and the impact of that. And they launched what they call the Discover project, and they look to identify the characteristics of promotional and media, and see how can we combine the data that come out of that and predict how will the baseline sales do that. And the system that they implemented, they use machine learning to analyze the demand variability and improve their demand planning, putting that into the production and making sure they have the right inventory at places where it's needed. And by that, they actually achieve target service levels for detailed supply chain execution. I mean, detailed is not only channel, it's even at store level. So in this case, they employ demand sensing to incorporate point of sales feeds from Danone's largest customers, the hypermarkets. And this new forecasting capability proved to be key functionality for not only improving their forecasting, but also creating an effective planning process between marketing, sales, account management, supply chain, and finance. That's why we say it's also helping to make their execution system more robust, because there's more time to work together instead of losing and battling on data and expectations. It's a very nice example. Then another one on a center of excellence in action for a food and snack company, a large one, mainly active in this business scope in Europe, but they have 50 plus DCs. It's one of the global Fortune 500 companies active in Europe. And this company was going through a carve out of several businesses. One of the divisions was sold, others were potentially up for IPO, and their core portfolio was to grow. So there was a lot of dynamics in place. And they established a center of excellence with advanced analytic tools. They wanted to conduct several network design initiatives at the regional level, whereas in the past they only they only worked on a country by country initiative, so really profit or loss per country based. In Europe they had 50 plus sites, as I said, but the key questions were, of course, which one were to remain, in what location, how big would they be, what kind of production would they do, and can we do, for instance, can we change the way that we serve the market? Can we do direct plant shipments from the plant into a DC of the customer? And the company, they had a COE already in place in the US, but they also wanted to develop one in Europe. And we were, as BCI, hired to set up, to train the staff there, to set up the process, run the first models, and then hand over to the customer. So we really helped them getting started in their center of excellence, although they had also one already active in the US. We combined what they did there, we combined our knowledge and helped them progress, setting up their COE faster than they could have on their own. Now, this company had really a complex network with cross-functional teams, and we worked with those cross-functional teams in the CEO. We looked at the growth, we looked at the lead times, inventory strategies, and we ended up with over 100 concepts to compare and driving the results. And they were to simplify the flows, to touch points reduce, driving the DC locations and co-locations to plants. And the overall results, as you see to the bottom right, it's amazing. The number of warehouses was 40%. The increased productivity by the remaining ones, of course, is very attractive. And this was an 8 months initiative. So it can be done in quite a condensed way if you have a good starting point and if you have a well-focused project in place. Now another one. This is one that I took from Western Digital, and they are really going Western Digital, as you know, is a high-tech company with a very high speed of development in their systems and products. So it's key for them to quickly respond to changes in the market and to allocate as late as possible their products to a certain market. So they were really setting forth as a strategic initiative for what they call a light-off supply chain. It's run automatic. There's no person interfering, and as you see on the slide here, they have been putting the supply chain analytics to the right side, and they use the outcome of that to steer in their light-off planning. And they, as you see, have different buckets in time, and they will do different decisions in each of these horizons that they have in their planning system. And also, the manufacturing optimization is basically fed from the supply chain analytics, making sure that the scheduling, the robot vehicle routing is using the analytics and basically optimizing for a part of that also on a day-to-day basis. So it really provides, and advanced analytics really provides the basis for their planning and allocation decisions in their supply chain. And that in turn, of course, is executed in an automated planning and manufacturing planning process, which really helps them free up time for making the real decisions as planners. And just to share some insight on how they work, this slide shows some insight in the tools and the type of analysis in several optimization stages. So first they understand descriptive, what happened. You see here tools that they use. Then they go to the predictive, what will happen, what do we expect here, how to optimize and how to make sure and for what items to scope and focus on. And prescriptive, or shaping, if you like. What should we do about it? How to move now? Should we, offload some of our production to an outsource? Should we maybe take it back because we see underutilization in our own lines? How do we review and how do we simulate the machine load, in the middle, the optimal capacity? And of course, use for that on the right side, you see the product and site qualification. So you have to be able to understand what alternatives are there. What product can I produce where, and how easily can it be switched? And combining this information and making sure the input of the one can be used in the other, that's really key in helping them in Western Digital to automate and do this, achieve this light-off supply chain. Due to the time, I will be very short on this one. You have to make sure that in your center of excellence, you make sure you have your roles identified. You have your network design leader to plan and coordinate projects. You're really the connection point to the businesses. Analysts should own and frame the decisions to be made, conduct the analysis, make sure that the technique is right. And data engineers should really make sure that the data that is needed is there and cleaned, and that it's made sure that it can be also fit for deploying ad hoc analysis. And the key challenges would really be to make sure that the data is made available, cleansed, it's harmonized, it's the right data. Analysts must cope with the many baselines to make sure that the current situation is reflected in the right way, but also be able to manage many scenarios in many areas to answer the questions that are asked by the leadership teams, but also to test the robustness of the systems. And one of the other expectations is sometimes in management that the outcome of such center of excellence analysis will be the new budget. Well, that's not always the case. It will be a decision supportive tool. So it may say we can improve by 100,000 as compared to the baseline, not saying the exact detail of each budget element that there would be in the business. And of course, it can be quite complex to manage this process to a success. But that's, it wasn't said it's always easy to reach the next level of maturity. If you want to be a champion, you have to put in the effort, and you have to go and keep pushing for it, bring the discipline to execute. So we talked a lot now on COE, analytics, and data. So let's see that we present some conclusions and takeaways here. So a COE can really add significant value. It's a bit depending on scope and questions to be answered, but having said so and making sure that's clear, that's how it can add value. You need to create understanding and alignment. What are the questions? What tools will we, for those, deploy, and why? And where do we add the value, and what data do we need for that? Data is king. Data is king, and it will remain king. It's always underestimated. You need to build and invest an active data repository. Master data management is not sexy, but if you do not invest in getting the master data right, forget about the benefits of analytics. Rubbish in is rubbish out. Make sure the data is good. It's the foundation of the house. And guys, we don't need to boil the ocean. Start small, conduct pilots, demonstrate the value add. It can be a simple exercise for a finished good. And then you expand and you take other geos or other functional elements. And you could pilot, once you've done the basics, you could pilot demand sensing in a specific geography with a limited number of customers and an enthusiastic sales group. That's how you show value, and that's how you get the spiral up running. And of course, staffing. It's key. It's an issue. The war on talent is going on, and you need to find data analysts. That's a different breed of people, It's not there, and they don't look like the other guys in the teams already. So it's there. You need to recruit them. You need to find them. You need to train them. And if they're a PhD in data, they will get bored quickly. So you must make sure that diversity in the organization is there. And it's also key to provide a career path to those guys. They're different people. They're different. They have different interests. They may not always go for the job with the bigger money. They will also go for the challenge and the issues they need to solve. And as said, staffing models can include also a mix of own staff and BPO outsourced staff to make sure that the longer term guaranteeing of capacity and expertise is there for the company. But really, guys, get the basics right first before you jump. You have to go making sure that your starting point is good, and you don't want to get shot internally because people challenge the data and assumptions. Yeah, you say so, but you're looking at the wrong set. Well, that's killing all proposals that you make. So AI, predictive analytics, it's great, but we need to get started with pilots, proof of concepts, making sure we get the data right, and then we can move on. Then we can make it happen. Yeah, I think I'm at the end here. So Scott, you've been kind enough to monitor the questions. I give the baton to you now.
Thank you very much, Reitze. Great presentation. Appreciate you sharing your perspective today. So to our audience, we're going to take the next couple minutes to take a few questions. We've had several submitted already. Reitze, so I'm going to start right here with this first question. So in your opinion, when are we going to see a majority of companies have a center of excellence in place and use and apply advanced analysis tools?
Wow, yeah. If only I knew. Well, okay, honestly, some verticals, like industrial companies or healthcare, they're typically moving a bit slower to invest and implement new concepts like center of excellence. And there will also be quite a difference in the pace of rollout. As we see, we get people embarking and then piloting and then roll out. And it is also a bit dependent on all of the other initiatives that a company is engaged in. But successful companies in high tech and retail, they demonstrate the benefits. And my guess is that this will take some 3 to 7 years until leading companies in those markets will have, the majority of them will have a COE implemented. And to to help speed that up, we as BCI, but other support companies can also help those leaders in designing, implementing, and improving COEs, which also goes for the companies that are now in the call, of course. So my take would be somewhere in the 3 to 5 years that we will see a large pickup on COE installations and implementations ongoing.
Terrific. Right, so you also mentioned in the food snack company case study that it took them about 8 months or so to stand up their center of excellence. On that note, what is a typical duration to set up a center with advanced analytics?
Yeah, it's a logic question with a broad answer. So the one that we discussed on the snack business, they were able to make something of a head start because there was already experience in place in that environment. So it's a bit dependent on the starting situation in the companies and the role of the COE that is defined. And typically it would be a growth path, probably starting with a control tower for transport, then to be expanded, for instance, with demand and arranging the availability of SKU or the network redesign, and of course the NPI. So, well, overall it will take a few years to grow from, let's say, if you're starting at a country-based system, it will take you a few years to get from that country-by-country system into a full-fledged center of excellence. And any sub-project would be taking 6 to 12 months with multiple steps to go there. So from the start of the design to the implementation, you should reckon with 4 or 5 stages in 6 to 12 months each. So that's why I say it could take a few years to get from we don't have anything in place until we have a COE that we can proud of and really helps us grow our business.
And then one final question, coming back to the why, right? Always coming back to the why. Why do companies, what factors drive companies to invest in a center of excellence?
Yeah, that's really the thing. So why are they doing this? We typically see the companies that have high product innovation rates or high dynamic markets, like high-tech companies, the companies that have top brands in fashion and retail. They want to protect the business and they move first, seeking market share and margin uptake with the products. They can do that because they are structuring and improving their supply chain setup over and over in such a center of excellence. So it helps them put the product, and it helps them analyze and expect better where to put the product, and by that gain market share, promotional success, have less loss of sales, for instance, and also make sure there is far less obsolete or write-off. And it all helps the positive recognition of the brand in the market. If you want something, probably you're already suggested by shaping analytics, you're already suggested to want to buy a jeans or to want to buy the new device on the market, and it's there also. It's available there, so you're actually made aware of it. It's there in the market. It's there in your shop. If you want, you can buy it online. You can go and see and touch it in the shops. It's there for you, and it helps raise brand awareness. That's I think the main driver for many of the companies. Predict better, shape and understand your supply chain, become more robust, and generate better margin with higher market share. I think that's the highest aim that drives companies to invest in a center of excellence.
Perfect. Well, really appreciate your time and perspective today, Reitze. To our audience, you'll find Reitze's contact information as well as Allison Turner's contact information, who's also with BCI Global. Reitze, while he travels globally and helps companies globally, he's based in Tilburg in the Netherlands, and Allison Turner resides here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm sure both are willing to compare notes and answer questions and serve as a resource for members of our audience. So, Reitze, again, thanks. We're going to be concluding our session this afternoon on a few final items. First, we'd invite our audience to join us for one of our upcoming webinars. We have several intriguing sessions on the docket, from reverse logistics to lip service leadership, gender pay gap IQ, including a new one that we didn't list on the screen there, we just confirmed recently, creating a culture that attracts top supply chain talent. As Reitze mentioned, you've got to have the right talent on board to stand up something as powerful as a center of excellence. So what's the type of cultures that attracts that level of supply chain talent? That's going to be an upcoming webinar in August. Secondly, if you're in the state of Georgia and you want to engage the next generation of students, we'd welcome you to join us for our Supply Chain 101 initiative, where we're taking teams of volunteers into elementary schools to talk supply chain with students. Contact us for more information there. Also, if you're interested in pursuing a supply chain management certification, be sure to check out our APICS Atlanta CSCP and CLTD boot camps at Georgia Tech in July. More information there can be found at scl.georgiatech.edu. Finally, feel free to reach out to me if there's anything else we can do to serve as a resource for you and your organization. Hey, Reitze, before we conclude today's session, any final thoughts on your end?
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Yeah, thank you all for listening. And just my final thought, my message to you would be really a call upon you. Don't be satisfied with the supply chain you have now in place. Either you go for this center of excellence with advanced analytics, or you go to and really improve and establish your sales and operations planning process. Make it happen. Make the move on getting a alignment amongst the disciplines and bridge the differences that there are in the companies for the greater good of the company. That's really my appeal to all of you, and I hope this session today will help you putting some extra energy and make you move in that area, make you move in that direction. Thank you.
You bet. Really appreciate that make it happen final message. So as we wrap up today, we'd like to give a big thanks to our guest speaker, Reitze de Graaf with BCI Global, for this presentation and his wonderful insight. We'd also like to thank his colleague, Allison Turner, for her facilitation and support. Big thanks to our sponsors again, APICS Atlanta and TalentStream. Of course, a big thank you to our audience for participating. So on behalf of Supply Chain Now Radio, this is Scott Luton concluding today's episode. Have a wonderful week, and we hope to reconnect with you again real soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.